What are you reading there, Yingying?
I'm looking at this article. It says that the majority of adults in US age 18 or older aren't married by choice. As a Chinese, that just seems crazy to me.
I can understand, but what's even crazier is if you read deeper into that, you're going to see that they're not just unmarried either. We've really hit a cultural inflection point in the US and in American life. Like the majority of adults are not only single or divorced, they aren't even living with a romantic partner or heading toward marriage.
Oh, so it's not just us, right?
Not even by a long shot.
On the bright side, I guess that explains the huge popularity of our topic today, online dating.
Today we'll have a quick look at the history of online romance, both in China and the US, and see what parallels we can make between them, if any. They are pretty different, to say the least.
We'll also look at the massive growth potential for this industry in China, where only 10% of the population uses such sites. Did you know it's about 38% in the United States?
Okay, now that is crazy. So swipe right on us, and we'll be right back to get into it.
So to get us into the topic of online dating, first let's start with a quick history of how it originated in the first place, and then we can contrast it to how it has developed in China. Brandon, can you do the honors?
I'll try my best. So as we'll talk about in a moment, the first appearance of anything close to online dating in China wasn't until 2003, but it started much earlier in the West. Using computers effectively for romance started back when computers and the actual World Wide Web first became widely available, which was in the mid to later 1990s. Now, I was a bit of an early computer guy myself, but I wasn't like hardcore, The serious computer geeks were communicating on message boards and such in the 1980s, as I understand it, but it was pretty rudimentary back then, still mostly text-based messages, and there were no digital cameras widely available, and at early internet speeds, very few photos could be exchanged in a reasonable time period, and forget video.
Wow, this is a show where the generation gap between us becomes really obvious, I guess.
It's okay to just say it. I'm old. So anyway, when online dating got started back home, it evolved alongside the culture at large. So by the time large-scale dating sites came along, like Match.com and later smartphones and dating apps, the expectations of users were well established too. They demanded sites and apps that served a really wide range of tastes and needs, which is why sites like Christian Friend Finder, which is for dating with a devoutly Christian spin to it, and AshleyMadison.com, which is for married people who want to find people to cheat with, can coexist and are both wildly popular.
Wow. China, meanwhile, joined the internet party much later. The site that is credited as being the first online matchmaking site is Jiayuan.com, which was launched in 2003. It became very popular and paved the way for what came next.
And what did come next?
Actual online dating sites. Sites like Tantan and Momo, of course, when they showed up, they had very Chinese characteristics in terms of what users expressed of themselves and what they were looking for. They were very localized to Chinese tastes and expectations. It's changing a little now, but that's still mostly true.
Would it be fair to say that these sites, like the users, are less hookup-oriented and tailored to a, slower or gentler dating experience than in the West?
I think that's fair. China is more reserved, and the character of our dating sites used to really reflect that. Later on, the popular sites have been undergoing some changes. More on that in a minute. But the West is known to be very open, of course. How does that apply to sites there? I'm familiar with a few myself, but I have a feeling you might have more to say on this topic.
For sure. Back home, there are sites for every type of person and lifestyle. Straight, gay, swingers, seniors, religious or ethnic or even politically specific ones. You got sites for married cheaters or ones devoted to matching up leather daddies or sugar babies with their desired counterparts. Plus, there are others that are for serious BDSM practitioners or furries or other kinksters or, wait, what was the question again?
I think I may need you to define a few of those terms you just mentioned to me offline.
Deal.
But back to online. Have you used any dating sites since you've been coming to China? And if so, what is the experience like?
Okay, well, guilty when I moved here anyway. So I guess for one thing, it's been fairly reassuring to realize that the entire world isn't quite as depraved as I thought it was dating back there in Los Angeles for so long. Sorry, home team. The profiles I'd see back in the US were much different than the ones that popped up as soon as I changed my locations to Beijing, I tell you. I'd say that there are really two main categories I would see here. On the more general sites like OkCupid or Match.com, both of which are available here in China, the majority of profiles that I would see would be more innocent or reserved with what the people shared, and their stated expectations would reflect what I would think of as vestiges of the traditional stigma about online dating that went away in the West about 15 years ago. But I do understand it's still dominant here today, right?
Yes, now it's not like this as much in the bigger cities, but if people in smaller cities and towns meet online, there's still a sense of shame about it. There's a mistrust that it can lead to anything serious, which for them is the only point of dating. What was the other type?
Well, the second category is of women who are much closer to their foreign counterparts. They're the ones who are maybe more independent, they have more of an individual focus, and they're looking to, have their interests or needs met. They're not so much concerned with a family kind of a situation, I guess, and they're very confident in expressing themselves without shame. So guess which group I was more interested in?
It's a total mystery, I think.
I know, right? I'm so hard to read that way. So, Yingying, how does this compare with the Chinese sites that you're familiar with? I mean, you know that I speak a tiny little bit of Mandarin, but I can't read or write the language, so I never used a local dating site myself.
Well, the local sites that are popular do have a strong local flavor. Momo was more of traditional dating site with Facebook-like qualities, but Tantan is closer to a Chinese Tinder. These sites have been urging people away from acquaintance society model towards a more stranger society. Remember that more traditional Chinese people don't like to start conversations with strangers, mistrusting them by default.
Right.
So flirting with strangers is a learned skill, not a natural one. And these local apps are adapted to the Chinese mindset. Lately, though, Momo has purchased the Tantan and tried to reposition themselves as more of a localization-specific social site, although they're not really actually fooling anyone. But as you said, lots of local people use some of the international sites too, even Tinder.
Yeah, they do, and no disrespect, but I've got to tell you, back when I was new here and using them myself, I did see a lot of local girls on Tinder, but from my perspective, most of them weren't doing it right. They mostly seem to be looking just for friends or language partners or maybe this more traditional style of romance that you don't associate with Tinder in the West, and they have this phrase, just for fun. Now, that's a term they seem to use a lot here when what they mean is that they don't want anything romantic or remotely sexual, but that phrase means something very different where I'm from. It doesn't mean someone to just eat hot pot with, for instance.
Well, you do know that Tinder has not only shaped societies in markets it has entered in some ways, it has also actually been shaped by other markets that didn't or couldn't accept its Western model. Tinder in many markets have adapted and localized. It often now features ways to meet just friends, to play games, join groups, activity, etc.
Yeah, that's fine, and I know that, but despite the spin that their marketing department has tried to put on this after the fact, Tinder was intentionally shaped as a hookup app from the get-go, so efforts to claim otherwise now are disingenuous. But back to the story, the real eye-opener for me was discovering that there are some local girls here who are apparently using it in a very similar style to the West, although the ones I saw here were still a lot more subtle in what they put out there, even the clearly wild ones.
What do you mean by subtle?
Well, there was usually more front cleavage instead of, the rear kind.
I'm shocked I have no official comment.
I thought I might get one of those out of you today before we were done. So let me ask you this. Do you ever see online dating being truly accepted here?
Sure, it's only a matter of time before China's online dating scene rivals the West. In the US, it's 38% right now, but in China, it's only about 10%. Momo has 78 million active users per month, and that's still a big number. But of course, there are 1.4 billion people here.
Right.
Now that it's merged with Tantan, which had 20 million active monthly users and has matched over 10 million couples since it started, so it should only grow wider and become even more Chinese.
Meaning there's going to be way less butt cleavage.
I'm shocked and I have no...
You don't have to say it, Ying, we know.
Can we just play the music now?
So, Ying, I've got to say, for a show about something as seemingly silly as online dating, we got into some real stuff. How would you wrap things up for the people here? Do you have any closing thoughts to share?
Sure, lots of exciting possibilities here, but we need to be careful to not give everything away to the machines.
Careful, you're starting to sound like some of those people building survival rooms in their basement.
Well, I'm still optimistic about the future. But the gifts of big data come with a price tag too. We need to be aware of the implications of this present convenience for the future. If a social credit system tries to limit our options, we cannot allow technology to rule our hearts.
Preach it, Ying.
The bottom line is that China is much the same as anywhere else. Online dating has a time and a place. But don't forget to leave a little mystery for when you meet people in that most important ways, offline.
I hear you, Ying.
And I see you hearing me.
Well, like you might say, building bridges is our business and business is good.
Fantastic. That's our show for today, and we have 2 more for you this week.
Please don't forget about any of our earlier shows you might have missed, and you can find us online and send a comment, a show suggestion, or just reach out with any other feedback. We'd love to hear from you.
Yep, there's a contact form on our website, or you can find us on social media. And speaking of our website, there's a big list of upcoming shows you can check out too. And if you want to see what we'll be getting into next,
visit us there at howchinaworkspodcast.com for links to everything we mentioned and more. There are also a few media players on the site too, so if you're, say, at work and want to listen, but you have to be plugged into your computer and not your phone, well, you can use that information however you like to.
Don't forget to share, subscribe, read, and review us wherever you get your podcasts. This helps us a lot, and we really appreciate it.
We sure do. All right, thanks again for listening. I'm Brendan Davis.
And I'm Yingying Li. We'll see you again tomorrow to learn more about how China works.